The latest from Russia's war on Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is making a new diplomatic push this morning. Speaking to leaders at a European summit, Zelenskyy is also addressing, indirectly, the new turmoil in Washington over U.S. aid to Ukraine.
As for political storms, I'm confident in America, confident they are strong people, strong society with strong institutions, strong.
Now, as we look live here at Capitol Hill, Zelenskyy is referencing this week's events in Washington, the ouster of Speaker Kevin McCarthy, and the new uncertainty that could bring and mean for congressional approval of the Biden administration's next aid package for Ukraine. We are learning, meanwhile, how the U.S. military is finding a way to get Ukrainian forces some urgently needed help. And let's bring in Paul Hunter in our Washington bureau with more on this story. This new U.S. military help to Ukraine, Paul, in the form of ammunition.
Yeah, a lot of small weaponry as well and ammunition seized last year by U.S. naval forces that the U.S. says were being smuggled from Iran to Yemen, where there's a civil war underway in which Iran is accused of supporting Houthi rebel forces. The question for the U.S. was then how to legally give these seized weapons and ammunition to Ukraine, which, of course, continues to need more, and in many parts of the country running low on ammunition right now. But now, using a forfeiture claim via the U.S. Justice Department, the U.S. has decided it can and indeed has transferred some of what it has seized, with more to follow. It is by no means everything Ukraine needs, but it helps, including more than 1 million rounds of ammunition. The country's in dire need of long-range weaponry and air defense systems, though. On broader supplies, Ukraine is waiting for the U.S. and others to sort out continuing and additional support, while reports from Ukraine are underlining ammunition, for example, is now being rationed in some places. Other reports that stockpiles in Europe earmarked for Ukraine are dwindling. The Pentagon saying this week it can maintain current levels of U.S. support for, quote, a little bit longer.
As we've been mentioning, Paul, the Biden administration's latest military aid package for Ukraine is caught up in the chaos that we're seeing on Capitol Hill. And so you have far-right Republicans pushing hard against any further aid. This could it not, a key issue in the campaign and the choice for the next speaker? How could this all play out there?
Yeah, and look, I mean, before we get to that, consider a new poll in this country, which kind of drives what you're talking about. And, you know, from a Ukrainian perspective, is the continuation of a concerning trend, which is that popular support for providing aid from the U.S., including military aid to Ukraine, is shrinking. The poll asks Americans, should the U.S. provide weapons to Ukraine? And overall, just 4 in 10 answered yes, 41%. It is a further drop in support from not just Republicans, but Democrats as well, who've traditionally been much more strongly behind sending more aid. And indeed, it comes while Congress is supposed to be debating Joe Biden's request for another $24 billion worth of aid, most of it military. But as we've been talking all week, Heather, Congress is messed up right now dealing with finding a new Speaker of the House, stalling its work on everything else. More troubling for Ukraine is that one of the two contenders for the speakership right now, Jim Jordan of Ohio, was asked about his support for coming to the aid of, or continuing to come to the aid of Ukraine. Asked that question yesterday. Here's what he said.
I'm against that. What I understand is at some point we're going to have to deal with this appropriation process in the right way. And we're going to try to do that in the next, what are we down to, 41 days. The most pressing issue on Americans' mind is not Ukraine. It is the border situation, and it is crime on the streets.
He's against that, Heather. Joe Biden just quickly reaffirming his own determination to keep helping Ukraine, but everything's up in the air right now. Worth pointing out, another fear in Ukraine, of course, is if the U.S. were to ease up, other countries would follow suit. So a lot in play here.
Thanks, Paul. Paul Hunter in Washington.